Wind clawed at the city like a living thing, dragging trash cans across sidewalks and snapping banners loose from their moorings. The storm had rolled in faster than the forecasts predicted, a wall of black-green clouds that seemed to swallow Chicago whole. Rain hammered the streets with relentless force, bouncing off taxi hoods, soaking through coats within seconds. Lightning split the sky in harsh white flashes, each one followed instantly by thunder that rattled the glass of boarded-up storefronts. It felt less like October and more like the end of the world. Maya Sinclair stood outside the Morrison Gallery with her jacket clutched tight around her and her camera bag pressed to her side, shivering despite the heat still clinging to the city from summer's ghost. The exhibition had been a disaster. 6 months photographing the slow, cruel erasure of entire neighborhoods. Families displaced, businesses shuttered, luxury condos rising where corner stores once stood. And only 17 people had shown up to look at the work. 17 who glanced politely at the boarded windows and hollow-eyed children before hurrying back to their safe streets. Maya had poured herself into that project, hoping to stir outrage, or at least conversation. Instead, she walked out into a storm that threatened to sweep her and her efforts off the map. The Uber app glowed in her hand. Surge pricing had spiked through the roof, $42 for a ride home. Too much, but the alternative was standing in this chaos, waiting for public transit that might never arrive. She pressed confirm. The screen flickered and updated. Shared ride. Someone else had requested a pickup going north. Discount applied. Maya exhaled, annoyed. Even during the apocalypse, the algorithm found ways to shove strangers together. The Toyota Camry pulled up, wipers slashing frantically across the windshield. Headlight. Indeed. His posture looked casual, but his eyes betrayed him. They flicked to the mirrors, the windows, the street behind them. Always moving, scanning, calculating. He carried himself like a man expecting trouble. Maya shifted, pulling her bag closer, her camera strap slipping free of the zipper. His gaze dropped to it, and for the first time his expression softened into something like a smile. "You're a photographer." "Freelance photojournalism," she said, guarded. "A good eye is a survival skill in my line of work." "And what line is that?" "Import and export. International logistics." Smooth, rehearsed. A lie so practiced it sounded almost plausible. Maya held his gaze, refusing to look away. "Right." The driver swore under his breath as a massive oak crashed onto the street ahead of them, branches tearing across parked cars. He detoured sharply, the GPS rerouting, sending them through Englewood. Maya's stomach dropped. That neighborhood in the middle of a catastrophic storm meant danger. Gang territory, power outages, shadows where threats could hide. She saw it too, the small flicker in the man's jaw as the car turned. He didn't like this route. His green eyes darkened, and his voice dropped to something that wasn't a suggestion, but an order. "Lock the doors." Maya's hand froze on her bag. A stranger, with blood on his cuff, giving commands like a man used to being obeyed. The storm roared around them, swallowing the city whole, and she realized with a cold certainty that whatever she had just stepped into, it was far more dangerous than a Chicago storm. The car crawled deeper into the storm, rain hammering against the roof so hard it drowned out the engine. The streetlights flickered, one by one, going dark until the block looked abandoned. Water pooled at the curbs, rising higher with every passing minute. Maya tightened her grip on her bag, watching. Shadows shift in alleys as they passed. She told herself they were just figures trying to escape the storm, but something about the way the man beside her stiffened said otherwise. His gaze tracked every doorway, every corner, every reflection in the glass. The driver muttered about flooded roads and cursed the reroute, but he didn't slow. His shoulders hunched low, hands gripping the wheel like it might save him. The windshield wipers screeched back and forth, unable to clear the torrent of rain. Lightning cracked across the sky, and for a heartbeat, Maya saw them illuminated in stark detail. 2 cars angled across the road ahead, blocking it completely. The driver slammed the brakes, tires skidding across slick pavement. Maya pitched forward, barely catching herself. Her breath froze as doors flew open on both cars, and figures poured into the street. Men with hoods pulled low, weapons glinting even in the storm. Gunfire erupted, sharp cracks splitting the night. Glass exploded as bullets punched through the windshield, shards spraying across the front seats. The driver screamed, ducking low, the car veering sideways. Maya's heart pounded in her ears, her body too slow to catch up with what was happening. Then she felt it, his hand on the back of her head, shoving her down, his body pressing over hers. He was solid, unyielding, the storm of bullets outside crashing against steel while he shielded her with nothing but flesh and will. The smell of gunpowder cut through Rain, acrid and unmistakable. Her cheek pressed against the damp leather seat, and she could feel his chest heave above her, steady despite the chaos. Another burst of gunfire shredded the driver's side window. The man behind the wheel panicked, throwing the door open and bolting into the rain. Maya heard him splash away, his footsteps swallowed instantly by the storm. They were alone now, trapped inside a bullet-riddled car boxed in by men with guns. The stranger lifted his weight just enough for her to breathe, his voice calm in a way that didn't match the panic in her veins. "Are you hit?" She shook her head, trembling, her voice barely working. "No. You." His eyes locked on hers, those green depths burning with something fierce. "Fine. We can't stay here." She stared at him in disbelief. Out there meant running straight into a war zone, but his hand slid down, gripping hers, warm and commanding. "Trust me." He pushed the door open, the storm roaring in, and in that instant she knew hesitation meant death. They ran. Rain slammed into them like a wall, soaking her within seconds. Her sneakers splashed through water so deep it sucked at her feet, but he never let go of her hand. Bullets sparked against metal somewhere behind them, muffled by thunder. Every step felt like the city itself was trying to pull them under, but he moved with certainty, dragging her through chaos, as if he'd been in this moment 100 times before. He pulled her into a narrow alley, brick walls rising on either side, graffiti dripping wet under lightning. They pressed against the wall, gasping, water streaming off their hair and clothes. He angled his body between her and the mouth of the alley, one hand still holding hers, the other reaching inside his jacket. When his hand came back out, she froze. A gun. Sleek, black, familiar in his grip, as though it belonged there. He checked it with practiced efficiency, rain running off the barrel. "You're armed," she said, her voice breaking with accusation more than surprise. "Yes." No apology. No explanation. Her chest tightened, realization clawing through her. He wasn't some businessman caught in the wrong place. He was someone who expected this, who lived in it. Her instincts screamed at her to run, but her body betrayed her, rooted by his presence. He looked out into the storm, calculating. "And you climb?" he asked suddenly, pointing to a fire escape above them. Maya followed his gaze. The metal ladder dripped with rain, slick as ice, swaying in the wind, better than staying on the ground when they start searching, he added, voice low but certain. "They." The word cut through her fear like a blade. Whoever those men were, they weren't random. They weren't just gang members caught in the storm. They had come for him. And now, by sharing this ride, by stepping into his world for even a single night, they had come for her too. The storm beat against the city like a drum, drowning every sound until even the gunfire faded into the distance. Maya pressed her back to the cold brick wall, her breath coming in sharp bursts, her clothes clinging to her skin. The stranger beside her didn't look rattled. His posture was steady, his eyes calculating every flicker of movement at the alley's mouth. Water streamed down his face, but he didn't flinch. His hand never trembled as he kept the gun low at his side, ready but hidden from view. Maya couldn't take her eyes off him. The expensive suit soaked through, the blood on his cuff, the metallic tang that clung to him, it all screamed of violence. He wasn't just some executive caught in the wrong place. Everything about him felt too precise, too deliberate. Her chest tightened with the realization. This wasn't chance. Whoever those men were, they weren't just random gunmen. They had been hunting him. Her voice cracked when she finally spoke. "Who are you, really?" His eyes flicked to hers, green and sharp in the dim flashes of lightning. His lips curved slightly, not quite a smile. "Someone you shouldn't be near." That wasn't good enough. She stepped closer, anger cutting through her fear. "People just tried to kill you. You carry a gun like it's an extension of your hand, and you're bleeding. Import and export. That's a lie. Or the first time since she had met him, something shifted in his expression. Not guilt, not shame, but a flicker of respect. You notice details. Most people don't. It's my job to notice, she snapped. I'm a photographer, and I know the smell of blood when I'm sitting next to it. He studied her for a long moment, then tilted his head slightly, rain dripping from his dark hair. I told you enough. Too much truth, and you don't walk out of this alive. Her pulse pounded louder than the storm, so I'm just collateral. No. His tone was firm, a command layered beneath his words. You're not collateral. That's why I have to get you out before they sweep these streets. Maya's throat tightened. You're being hunted. He didn't deny it. Instead, his gaze slid back to the alley entrance. They'll realize soon that the car was abandoned. They'll start searching for me. And when they do, they'll kill anything standing too close. A chill swept through her that had nothing to do with the rain. She wrapped her arms tighter around her camera bag. Instinct had made her lift it in the chaos, had made her fire off shot after shot of the ambush, the cars, the faces in the storm. Even now, through fear and adrenaline, the weight of those images pressed heavy against her. Her voice shook when she admitted it. I took pictures. His attention snapped to her, sharp as a blade. You what? It was instinct. I just shoot when something happens. She fumbled with the zipper, pulling the camera out, its surface slick with rain. The digital screen glowed faintly, proof of what she'd captured. Faces, license plates, men with weapons caught in the light of lightning. For 3 long seconds he said nothing. Then his voice dropped to something softer, almost dangerous. Maya, you need to delete them. Why? Her grip tightened around the camera. Because if those photos exist, you won't live to see tomorrow. The men in them work for someone very dangerous. Evidence won't save you. It will only mark you for death. She felt the weight of his words, but another weight pressed harder. These images were truth. They mattered. They could expose what had just happened. Her jaw clenched. I'm not deleting anything. The storm howled louder, wind driving rain sideways into the alley. He stepped closer, the space between them charged with something more than fear. His hand hovered near hers, not reaching, not forcing, just waiting. Then his phone buzzed, a sharp vibration against the silence. He answered without looking away from her. His tone shifted into rapid Italian, controlled but urgent. She caught fragments, names, places, the word Englewood, and something that sounded like war. When he hung up, his jaw was tight, his voice low. We have to move. Maya swallowed hard, her heart hammering. Move where? Somewhere they won't find you. And what about you? His eyes met hers, unflinching. They'll never stop finding me. For the first time, she understood. Whoever Gabriel Ravellini really was, he wasn't running from danger. He was the center of it. And now, because of one shared ride, she was tangled in his storm. The storm had not eased by the time they reached the warehouse. The building sat like a fortress in the middle of Englewood's industrial maze, its rusted walls shaking with the wind, its shadows thick enough to swallow them whole. Gabriel pushed the heavy door open and guided Maya inside, his hand still locked around hers. The smell of oil and damp concrete filled the cavernous space. A handful of men were already waiting, their silhouettes sharp under the glow of bare light bulbs. They stopped what they were doing the moment Gabriel stepped in, their eyes flicking to him with silent acknowledgement. Maya's pulse quickened. These weren't random men taking shelter from the storm. Their postures were disciplined, their movements precise, as if each of them knew exactly where to stand, how to watch every corner. Weapon, as gleamed at their sides, casual but ready. It felt less like a hideout and more like a command post. One man stepped forward, older, silver hair slicked back, his tailored suit out of place in this ruin of a warehouse. He spoke in Italian first, rapid, clipped, too fast for Maya to follow. But then his voice shifted, English breaking through like a blade. We secured the perimeter, but the Bratva is still probing. They're growing bold. Maya froze. Bratva, the Russian Mafia, Her stomach twisted, her breath shallow. She turned instinctively toward Gabriel, searching for denial, but his jaw only tightened. The silver-haired man lowered his voice, though not enough to stop it from carrying across the empty space. "Don Ravellini, this storm is cover for something bigger. They'll use tonight to make their move." The name struck Maya like thunder. Don Ravellini. She'd heard it whispered before, in half-finished conversations, in news stories that never said too much but hinted at more. The Ravellini family. Old blood, old power. The name tied to rumors of casinos, construction, shipping routes. Chicago's underworld royalty. Her throat closed as the realization settled like ice in her veins. The man who had shielded her from gunfire, who held her hand as they ran through the storm, who stood beside her now with a gun hidden under his coat. He wasn't just dangerous. He wasn't just someone being hunted. He was the center of it all. The city's most feared Mafia boss. Gabriel must have felt the shift in her breathing, the way her body stiffened. His gaze flicked to her, unreadable, then back to the advisor. "Prepare the safe house. No mistakes." He spoke with an authority that filled the air, leaving no space for argument. The men moved instantly, scattering to carry out orders. Maya stayed rooted in place, her heart slamming against her ribs. Every story she had ever chased as a photojournalist, every rumor she had brushed against in the city's underbelly, suddenly had a face. And that face was inches from hers. She whispered it before she could stop herself. Ravellini. He heard her. The silence between them grew thick, heavy, a battle of truths neither wanted to speak. Finally, his voice came low, steady. "You shouldn't have heard that." Her fingers tightened around her camera strap. "You're their leader. You're the reason they were shooting. You lied to me." His eyes darkened, but there was no apology in them, only honesty, sharp and dangerous. "I didn't lie. I gave you the version that would let you sleep at night." She shook her head, water dripping from her hair, her voice breaking with fury and fear. "I shared a car with you because I thought we were both running from the same storm. But you are the storm." For a moment something flickered across his face, something unguarded, a shadow of regret. Then it was gone, replaced by the steel of command. "I told you, Maya. Stay too close to me, and you'll lose everything." The storm outside howled louder, rain beating against the steel roof like gunfire. Inside the warehouse, his men gathered maps, radios, weapons. War was in motion. And Maya realized she wasn't just a witness anymore. She was entangled in Gabriel Ravellini's world, whether she wanted it or not. Morning broke with a gray heaviness that made the city feel as though it had drowned overnight. Streets were littered with debris, cars abandoned mid-intersection, shop windows shattered by the force of the storm. News anchors called it catastrophic, but the word felt hollow compared to what Maya had witnessed. Not just the weather, but the war brewing in the shadows. She couldn't stop replaying the scene in the warehouse, the way those men had looked at Gabriel, the way they had called him Don Ravellini. She hadn't slept. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw flashes of gunfire, Gabriel's body covering hers, the sharp sound of his voice giving orders. She wanted to believe he had shielded her out of instinct, out of something human and uncalculated. But if he was who they said he was, then every move he made was strategy. Every word could be manipulation. Her feet carried her on autopilot to the one place in Chicago that still felt like home. The bakery. The smell of warm bread hit her the moment she stepped through the door, cutting through the metallic taste of fear lingering in her mouth. Behind the counter, her grandmother Elena looked up, silver hair tucked neatly into its bun, flour streaked across her apron. Relief flashed across her face before worry settled in. "You look terrible, Minhanetta. Sit. Tell me what's wrong." Maya dropped into the small chair in the corner, the one where she used to do homework as a child while her grandmother worked the ovens. Words caught in her throat, but the need for answers pushed them out. "What do you know about Gabriel Ravellini?" The air shifted instantly. Elena froze, the dough in her hands forgotten. Slowly, she set it aside and wiped her palms, her eyes narrowing with the weight of memories. That's a name I prayed you would never bring to me. So you do know him. Elena's sigh was long, heavy with history. Gabriel's family has been tied to this city for 70 years. His father was a hard man, ruthless. But Gabriel is not his father. He runs the family, yes, but he does it differently. He has rules. Rules, Maya repeated, her voice sharp. Rules don't stop bullets. Rules don't explain why I was dragged into a shootout last night. Her grandmother's eyes softened, lines around them deepening. Did he hurt you? No, he saved me. More than once. But that doesn't erase what he is. Elena walked over, sitting across from her granddaughter. When your grandfather died, I was drowning in debts. His father bought them. I thought I'd lose everything, even this bakery. But when Gabriel took over, he came here himself. He renegotiated. He paid half out of his own pocket and told me I owed him only bread on Sundays. Every week for 8 years he's come here. He never treated me like I was owned. He treated me like family. Maya's chest tightened. She had expected denial or ignorance, not loyalty. You're saying he's honorable. I'm saying he's complicated. He lives in a world built on violence, but he's tried to carve something cleaner from it. No drugs, no human trafficking, no civilians. That doesn't make him safe, but it makes him different. Maya rubbed her temples, torn between her instincts and the quiet certainty in Elena's voice. She remembered the way Gabriel had looked at her in the alley, the raw honesty when he'd said people die around me. He hadn't been lying. Before she could respond, the bell above the door chimed. The sound cut through the air, pulling both women to their feet. Maya's heart lurched when she saw him. Gabriel stood in the doorway, rain still dripping from his hair, his black sweater clinging to broad shoulders. His eyes found hers instantly, surprise flickering before it settled into something guarded. Maya, he said, his voice low. I didn't expect to see you here. Elena's gaze hardened, her protective stance unmistakable. So you know my granddaughter. Since last night, Gabriel admitted, and in that moment Maya saw something rare in his expression. Hesitation. The feared Don Ravellini looked almost uncertain under her grandmother's scrutiny. Elena crossed her arms. You brought her into this. I tried to keep her out, Gabriel said, his tone heavy, honest. But last night changed everything. Maya's pulse raced as she looked between them. Secrets she hadn't known existed were unraveling right in front of her. Her grandmother's loyalty to him, his admission that he had failed to shield her from his world. The storm outside had ended, but inside the bakery, another storm had just begun. Gabriel didn't raise his voice. Inside the bakery, but every word carried weight. He stood in the doorway like he belonged there, water dripping from his sleeves onto the tile. Elena held her ground. But Maya could feel the tension pulsing between them, two forces measuring each other, both stubborn enough to wait the other out. You're not safe here, Gabriel said finally, his eyes never leaving Maya's. They saw us together last night. If the Bratva is thorough, they'll check traffic cameras, trace the car, and then they'll come here. They won't hesitate to use you against me. Maya swallowed hard. His tone wasn't dramatic, it was fact. A certainty delivered with the kind of experience that made her blood run cold. Elena's jaw tightened. She's my granddaughter. You can't just take her. Gabriel stepped closer, and for the first time his composure cracked, just slightly. Do you think I want her near me? Every person who stands close to me becomes a target. My enemies don't care if she's innocent. If they find her, they will kill her. The truth in his voice was unshakable. Maya's stomach twisted because beneath the authority, beneath the power, she heard something else. Fear. Not for himself. For her. She finally broke the silence. If I go with you, am I your prisoner? No, he said instantly. You'll be protected. There's a difference. That sounded like a convenient line, and yet, when his eyes met hers, she believed he meant it. His honesty frightened her more than lies would have, because lies would have given her space to push back. This stripped away all her defenses. Elena touched her hand, her voice softer now. Min haneta. Sometimes survival means choosing the lesser danger. Maya wanted to argue, but she knew her grandmother was right. If the Russians had already started tracing her, she couldn't outrun them alone. With a breath that felt like surrender, she looked at Gabriel. Fine, but this is on my terms. His brow lifted. Terms. I'm not a piece on your chessboard. I work, I move, I decide for myself. And if you try to control me, I'll walk out no matter the risk. For a heartbeat, something flickered in his expression, like she had surprised him. Then, with the smallest nod, he said, Agreed. Within an hour, she was in his world. The black SUV that pulled up outside the bakery was nothing like the Uber she had climbed into the night before. Its windows were bulletproof, its tires thick enough to plow through wreckage. Luca, a broad man with eyes that missed nothing, opened the door for her. Inside, leather seats, surveillance screens, a feeling of quiet menace. Gabriel sat across from her as the city blurred by in streaks of rain and neon. She tried not to stare, but in the confined space it was impossible to ignore the scar on his jaw, the way his hands rested steady even after everything that had happened. He wasn't panicked. He wasn't rattled. He looked like a man who lived in storms. The penthouse rose above the Gold Coast, steel and glass cutting into the skyline. Inside, everything gleamed. Marble floors, floor-to-ceiling windows, a view of Lake Michigan glowing dark under storm clouds. It was luxury layered over fortification. She could see the cameras tucked in corners, the reinforced doors, the way every inch of the space was designed for beauty and defense. This is temporary, she said, her voice sharper than she meant it to be. I'm not staying here. You're staying here until I know you won't be used against me, Gabriel replied. His tone wasn't cold, but it left no room for argument. She crossed her arms. Then it feels like a cage. His eyes held hers. You can walk out whenever you want. But if you do, understand you won't walk far before someone else finds you. She hated how much sense it made. She hated that he was right. But what unsettled her most was the flicker of vulnerability in his gaze. He wasn't trying to own her. He was terrified she'd be destroyed in his orbit. A soft voice broke the tensy. Another one of your strays. Maya turned to see a young woman stepping from the hallway, long dark hair, hazel eyes bright with curiosity. She carried herself with ease, but there was no mistaking the resemblance. Sophia, Gabriel said, his tone a mix of warning and affection. This is Maya. She'll be staying with us. Sophia's smile tilted. Staying in the West Wing, I hope. If you'd put her near your bedroom, I'd have questions. Gabriel gave his sister a sharp look, but Sophia ignored it, walking right up to Maya and offering her hand. Don't worry, he's dramatic, but he means well. I'm Sophia Ravellini, law student, family disappointment. Maya shook her hand, almost laughing despite the tension. Maya Sinclair, photographer, unwilling guest. Perfect, Sophia said lightly, then leaned closer, her voice lower. He's terrified, you know. I haven't seen him like this since our father died. The words hit Maya like a punch. She looked back at Gabriel. The feared Don Ravellini. Terrified. Of her. The night inside the penthouse stretched heavy with silence, broken only by the hum of the storm outside and the occasional crackle of Gabriel's security radios. Maya wandered to the wide windows, staring down at the city's broken streets. From this height, the chaos almost looked beautiful. Rivers of headlights cutting through the rain, sparks of power lines struggling to stay alive. But she couldn't shake the feeling that she was standing inside a gilded cage, a bird being fattened for protection or slaughter. Behind her, Gabriel spoke in low tones with Luca, their words hushed but sharp. She caught fragments: shipment, betrayal, bratva. Each word tightened the knot in her stomach. This wasn't just survival. This was war. Sophia tried to soften the edges of the night, bringing tea and teasing her brother, but even her lightness couldn't erase the tension. Gabriel stood like a shadow carved into the room, his eyes never still, his jaw set hard. Maya hated that she found herself drawn to him even here, even knowing what he was. She tried to sleep in the guest room, but the sound of footsteps in the halls, the weight of cameras watching, made rest impossible. Hours later, the muffled crash of glass jolted her upright. Shouting followed, distant but rising. She ran to the door, pulling it open to see Luca sprinting down the hall with his gun drawn. Stay here, Gabriel ordered, appearing out of the shadows as though he had been waiting for the moment. His voice was ice, his presence a shield. Maya shook her head. What's happening? He didn't answer. Instead, he moved past her with deadly calm. The next minutes blurred, boots pounding against marble, doors thrown open, shouts echoing through the penthouse. She followed despite his command, her heart racing, her camera clutched like a lifeline. They found the intruder in the west corridor, a man pinned to the floor by Luca's knee. His face was swollen from the fight, blood dripping down his nose, but even battered he smirked. Maya's stomach dropped when she realized she had seen him before. He was one of the men who had greeted Gabriel in the warehouse. "Roberto," Gabriel said quietly, his tone heavier than thunder. The man spat blood onto the polished floor. "Don Ravellini, I told you years ago your rules would be your downfall. The Russians don't fear you. They think you're weak." Gabriel's eyes burned, but his voice never rose. "You fed them information." Roberto laughed, dark and hollow. "Why not? They pay better than loyalty." Maya flinched as Gabriel stepped closer, crouching down so their eyes met. There was no shouting, no display of rage, only a quiet fury that made the air itself feel dangerous. "You betrayed your blood," Gabriel said, each word carved in steel. "You put my sister in danger. You put her in danger." Maya's breath caught as his gaze flicked toward her. Roberto's smirk widened. "Oh, so that's what this is. She's your Agnes. The Storm Girl." Gabriel's fist shot out so fast Maya barely saw it move. The crack of bone against bone echoed, and Roberto's smirk dissolved into a groan of pain. Gabriel stood slowly, wiping his knuckles with deliberate calm. "Take him to the cellar. I'll deal with him when I decide what justice looks like." Luca dragged the traitor away, his shouts fading down the hall. Silence hung heavy. Gabriel didn't look at Maya at first, but she felt the weight of his presence pressing against her. When he finally spoke, his voice was quieter, rawer. "This is why I told you not to stay close. This world consumes everything, even family." Maya's chest ached, torn between fear and the undeniable pull toward him. She wanted to shout, to demand why she had to pay for the choices of men like him. Instead, what slipped out was softer, more dangerous. "Then why save me?" His eyes locked on hers, and for once there was no shield, no mask, "because you remind me there's something left worth saving." Her breath faltered, but the moment shattered when alarms blared again, louder, sharper. The Bratva had made their move. The alarms screamed through the penthouse like sirens from another world, red lights strobing against glass walls and polished marble floors. Maya's heart pounded as Gabriel barked orders into his radio, his voice sharp and unyielding. Luca and 2 other guards vanished into the stairwells with weapons drawn. The storm outside had calmed, but inside the building the tension was suffocating, the air heavy with the knowledge that this wasn't a drill. Maya backed into the corner of the room, clutching her camera even though she knew it was no shield. Her eyes darted to Sophia, who stood frozen at the edge of the hall, her face pale but her jaw clenched in defiance. Gabriel turned to them both, his presence commanding even with chaos pounding around them. "Stay inside, no matter what you hear." Maya wanted to argue, to demand answers, but before she could speak, the sound of her phone buzz and zing cut through the noise. She pulled it from her pocket, her blood freezing when she saw the name glowing across the screen. Carmen, her best friend, the only person outside this building who even knew she had survived the storm the night before. She hesitated, then answered. "Carmen." "Maya." Her friend's voice shook with panic. "You need to leave, right now." Maya's pulse stumbled. "What are you talking about?" "They're coming for you," Carmen whispered. "They know your name. They know where you are. I didn't want to, but they made me. They—" The line cracked, static hissing before Carmen's voice returned, desperate, broken. "They have my brother, Maya. I didn't have a choice." Maya's breath hitched, her knees almost buckling. She looked up at Gabriel, who was watching her with eyes that missed nothing. Her voice came out as a whisper. "Carmen set me up." For a moment, silence devoured the room, more terrifying than the alarms. Then Gabriel strode forward, pulling the phone gently from her hand. He ended the call without a word, his expression unreadable, carved from shadow. You don't understand, Maya pleaded, her chest tight. They have her brother. She wouldn't betray me otherwise. Gabriel's jaw tightened, his voice low, almost gentle despite its edge. The Bratva doesn't care about reasons, they only care about results. And now they know how to reach me through you. Her stomach twisted. So what happens now? His gaze locked on hers, unwavering. Now they'll come for you. And when they do, they'll think they've trapped me. But they've underestimated how far I'll go to protect what's mine. The weight of his words pressed against her, more dangerous than any bullet. What's mine? It wasn't a confession, but it wasn't casual either, and it made her tremble in a way that fear alone never could. Before she could respond, a thunderous blast shook the building. The floor vibrate. Deep beneath her feet, dust raining from the ceiling. Sophia gasped, clutching the wall as windows trembled in their frames. Smoke began to seep through the ventilation system, acrid and sharp. They've breached the lower levels, Luca's voice crackled through Gabriel's radio. Heavy numbers. Gabriel's expression darkened, his hand already on the weapon at his side. Secure the penthouse. We hold them until I say otherwise. Maya felt the room closing in, every camera, every steel lock suddenly meaningless against the force pressing in from the outside. Her best friend had been forced to betray her. The Russians were storming the building, and the man beside her, the man she feared and wanted in equal measure, was preparing for war. The warehouse stank of salt water, rust, and cigarette smoke. Harsh light swung from steel beams overhead, throwing long shadows that seemed alive. Maya sat in a chair at the center of the room, wrists tied, heart pounding so hard she could barely hear over the roar of her own pulse. The storm outside had finally broken, but the storm inside was just beginning. Dmitry Vulov circled her like a predator enjoying the fear of its prey. His pale hair clung damply to his forehead, his eyes sharp and amused as if this were a game. So this is the woman who makes Gabriel Ravellini reckless. He leaned close, his voice carrying a cruel lilt. I should thank you. Without you, he would never have walked into my hands. Maya refused to look away, even though her stomach churned. She forced steel into her voice. You don't know him if you think he'll just hand himself over. Dmitry laughed, sharp and humorless. He'll come. Men like Gabriel always do. Pride, honor, obsession. He thinks he's invincible, but even the strongest man bleeds when you cut him deep enough. He brushed a finger along her cheek as if testing her resistance. His weakness looks a lot like you. Maya jerked her head away, hatred searing hotter than fear. You killed my parents, didn't you? She hadn't meant to say it, but the words tore out of her like shrapnel. She saw the flicker in his eyes, quick and cruel confirmation. They were in the wrong place at the wrong time. He shrugged. They saw something they shouldn't have. That's what happens when ordinary people play in dangerous games. The floor seemed to drop beneath her. The truth she had suspected now stood in front of her with a smirk. Her parents had died because of this man's orders. Her throat tightened, but she refused to give him the satisfaction of tears. The doors crashed open, the metallic clang echoing like thunder. Gabriel strode into the warehouse alone, every movement precise, deliberate, like a wolf stepping into enemy territory. His black shirt clung to his frame, damp with rain, but his presence was fire, danger and command rolled into one. Dmitry spread his arms in mock welcome. The great Gabriel Ravellini. Look at you, walking willingly into your grave for a woman you barely know. Gabriel's gaze never left Maya, and for a moment the chaos of the world seemed to hold its breath. His voice was steady, but beneath it pulsed something raw. Let her go. This is between you and me. Dmitry pulled a gun from his jacket, aiming it lazily at Maya's head. But she's the leverage. Why would I waste such a perfect opportunity? His grin widened. Kneel. Gabriel dropped to one knee, his eyes still locked on hers. There was no fear, no surrender in that gaze, only trust, fierce and unyielding. Maya felt the weight of it press into her bones. The moment stretched like a wire about to snap. Then all at once, the room erupted. Glass shattered as smoke canisters rolled across the concrete. Gunfire cracked, deafening in the enclosed space. Gabriel moved like lightning, knocking Dmitry's arm aside as the shot went wide. Men poured from the shadows. Luca's team, masked and armed, turning the warehouse into a battlefield. Maya ducked instinctively, the chair toppling as bullets sparked against steel. The world narrowed to flashes of light and the pounding rhythm of her heart. Gabriel's hand gripped her arm, yanking her up as he cut through the ropes with a blade he'd drawn in the chaos. "Stay with me," he ordered, his voice like an anchor in the storm. They ran through smoke and gunfire, Gabriel's body always between hers and the bullets. Dmitri roared orders, his voice cold and furious. Soldiers fell, crates splintered, the air thick with smoke and the scent of cordite. At the center of it all, Gabriel and Dmitri collided, fists and rage crashing together in a brutal dance. Each blow was fueled by years of rivalry, by blood spilled and families destroyed. Maya's eyes locked on Gabriel, her chest tight with both terror and awe. He wasn't just fighting for territory or survival, he was fighting for her. The warehouse floor shook with violence, every sound amplified by the emptiness around them. Gunfire echoed like thunder, mingling with shouts in Italian and Russian. Smoke curled through broken windows, cutting the light into jagged shafts. Maya pressed against a steel pillar, her lungs burning, her hands trembling around the camera she hadn't even realized she'd pulled from her bag. She couldn't help it. Even in the middle of this nightmare, her instincts to document truth refused to die. In the center of the storm, Gabriel and Dmitri tore into each other with the raw fury of men who carried entire legacies on their shoulders. Gabriel's fists were brutal, each strike precise, deliberate, his green eyes burning with a fury Maya had never seen. Dmitri matched him with ruthless strength, laughing even as blood trickled down his jaw. "You can't stop this, Ravellini. The city is already mine." Gabriel caught him with a blow that sent him staggering. "Not while I breathe." Maya's stomach twisted at the sight. Gabriel wasn't fighting like a man defending territory. He was fighting like someone who had already made peace with dying here, as long as it meant taking his enemy with him. Dmitri lunged, drawing a knife from his belt, the blade glinting under the lead. Kts. He slashed, catching Gabriel's shoulder. Blood spread quickly, soaking fabric, but Gabriel didn't falter. He drove his knee into Dmitri's ribs, followed by a brutal uppercut that snapped his head back. Still, Dmitri smiled, crazed and mocking. "You'll lose her anyway. You lose everyone." Something inside Maya snapped. She spotted a Bratva soldier raising his weapon at Gabriel's back, the barrel glinting through smoke. Without thinking, she grabbed the heavy camera tripod near her feet and swung it with everything she had. The man crumpled, his weapon clattering across the concrete. Gabriel saw it, just for a moment. His eyes found hers through the chaos, pride and fear, and something deeper burning there. Then he turned back to Dmitri, pinning him against a crate. "This is for her parents," Gabriel said, his voice low, guttural. Dmitri's smirk faltered, the first crack in his arrogance. Recognition flared in his eyes. She knows. Gabriel didn't hesitate. One final strike, the sound of bone cracking, and Dmitri collapsed, lifeless, against the concrete floor. The warehouse went still, the last of the Bratva scattering into the night. Smoke hung heavy in the air, broken only by the sound of Maya's ragged breathing and Gabriel's unsteady steps as he turned toward her. Blood stained his shirt, his knuckles raw. But he was alive. She ran to him, ignoring the sting in her lungs and the chaos around them. His hands caught her shoulders, his grip trembling. "Are you hurt?" "No," she whispered, her throat raw. I'll live." His gaze locked on hers, fierce and unyielding. "You saved me. You saved me first." The truth hung between them, heavier than smoke, more powerful than violence. They weren't equals in strength or power, but in that moment they were bound by something deeper. Shared survival, shared choices, shared blood spilled for each other. Luca's voice broke the spell, barking orders as his men cleared the last of the building. Adriano appeared from the shadows, his face grim. "It's done. The Bratva's finished. But the other families will circle. They'll want to know what comes next." Gabriel's arm tightened around Maya, steadying himself. "What comes next is rebuilding." Maya shook her head, her voice quiet but firm. "No, what comes next is the truth." Gabriel studied her, reading the fire in her eyes. He knew what she meant. The photos, the archive, the story her father had died to tell. Exposing the corruption that had enabled Dmitri for years. It was dangerous, but it was justice. Days later, the city buzzed with headlines. Buried Truths, Maya's exhibition called it. 12 years of photographs connecting politicians, developers, and the Bratva. The gallery overflowed with people, journalists, activists, even ordinary citizens who wanted to see the rot exposed. Her father's final photos hung beside her own, proof that he hadn't died in vain. Among the crowd, Gabriel stood at the back, his arm in a sling, his presence undeniable, even in silence. When her eyes found him, the room seemed to fall away. After the closing speech, she joined him in the quiet of the street, Chicago's skyline gleaming above. "You don't have to stay," she said softly. "The war's over. You could disappear, rebuild somewhere else." His smile was tired, but real. "And leave you here alone?" "Never." She stepped closer, her pulse racing. "Then what are we?" His good hand brushed against her cheek, the touch softer than she thought him capable of. "We're what we choose to be, against the world, if we have to." Emotion rose in her chest, sharp and overwhelming. "Then choose me." "I already did," he whispered, "the night of the storm." When he kissed her, it wasn't reckless or desperate. It was a vow, forged in fire and blood and rain. A promise that whatever storms came next, they would face them together. And for the first time since that night outside the Morrison Gallery, Maya Sinclair no longer felt like she was documenting a story. She was living one. Dangerous, brutal, beautiful. The story of a woman who shared an Uber during a storm and found love in the arms of the city's most feared Mafia boss, a man who became her shield, her truth, and her impossible choice. And she knew deep down it was only the beginning.